16th of September today, and I welcome you all on today's edition of What to Read in the Hindu newspaper. While going through the articles, we will not only see its relevance with regard to prelims and mains, but we'll also try interlink it with other GS papers as well. So let's get started. The very first article that is there in the paper and that one must go through talks about Supreme Court stays arbitrary Waqf changes but upholds Act. Now, this is relevant with regard to GS paper 2, polity, wherein separation of powers, judicial reviews, and minority rights can be read and revised. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article majorly talks about balance between legislative supremacy versus judicial intervention. From prelims perspective, the areas that we have to brush up our knowledge on regarding provision of Waqf Board Act 1995 and the recent changes that has been done with regard to it. Knowing about and revising about Articles 25 to 30 of fundamental rights with special reference to minorities' right. Then doctrine of presumption of constitutionality is to be read and revised. From mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of discussion with regard to judicial reviews versus legislative domains, then role of courts in protecting minority rights, implication of religious endowment with regard to its governance structure. In this manner, this particular article is to be holistically seen. Moving on, the next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention talks about amid an export surge, trade deficits comes down by 54%. Now, this particular article is relevant for GS paper 3 under the theme economy, and in particular knowing about external sector, trade statistics and balance of payment. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article primarily talks about resilience in export despite global slowdown. From prelims perspective, the conceptual clarity that we need to have on certain topics such as what is trade deficit, its data, current account deficit, capital account basics that we need to know, trends and services versus merchandise exports. These facts and data are to be revised from the recent budget and economic survey. From mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of knowing about the need of structural reforms that is required to boost exports altogether. The significance of services as a stabilizer in India's external sector, because we are majorly service-driven economy. What are the challenges of global trade fragmentation that is there in the current time and its domain? In this manner, this particular article is to be holistically seen. Moving on, the next important article that is there and that catches our attention is on editorials page. And that majorly talks about procurement reforms. So here is this article. So in this article, the majorly talked about segment that is from that holds relevance from our exam perspective, talks about unlocking innovation with India's procurement reforms. This is the key theme now. When we map this particular topic as a part of our GS syllabus, this will fall under GS paper 3 economy, science and also this can be directly linked with GS paper 4 ethics in governance as well. Now, the key theme that has been discussed in this particular article majorly talks about enabling innovation through agile procurement. Now, agile as a theme has been discussed in one of the recent economic surveys as well. From prelims perspective, the basics that we have to know about while reading this particular article talks about what are the basics of public procurement, general financial rules, then role of DPIIT and procurement reforms that has been taken so far in the recent times. At the same time, this article holds relevance with regard to mains as well. So we need to know about how procurement bottlenecks affects innovation altogether in an economy like India. Global best practices that has been mentioned in this particular article, particularly regarding Germany, that can be replicated in India's case as well. So, and how this will help us in making Make in India policy and its R&D linkages altogether. At the same time, we got to balance it with ethics as well. So we need to know about the discretion and accountability with regard to procurement reforms that is required. The next important article that is there in the paper, and that majorly talks about India's economic ambition need better gender gap filling. So this particular article is regarding women empowerment in particular. So the key theme that has been mentioned in this particular article, that data-driven approach is needed for gender equality. So we are a huge economy, almost approximately 4 trillion, that counts. In that, only 18% of women is contributing in that GDP. So this is stark contrast that we aim for and is the current reality on ground is. This particular article is relevant with regard to GS paper 2, social justice and governance. From prelims perspective, this article is to be read from the lens of gender-based budgeting in India that is required. Then afterwards, not only budgeting is required, but also knowing whether whatever the approaches, the schemes, the governance programs that we are launching, is it really implementing on ground or not? So for that, we need to develop some sort of indices as well, which measures women's participation in formal economy altogether. From mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of role of disaggregated data in policy making. Then district level insights for targeted schemes. Afterwards, bridging general gender gap in economic participation as well. So what are the way forward for this particular issue that we are facing right now to make Indian economy truly inclusive in nature? In this manner, this particular article is to be seen holistically. The facts and data related to it, I have already underlined in this particular article. Moving on, the next important article that is there in the paper and that stands out to read in today's edition talks about mental health. And this mental health is even a fundamental right as well. So quotes nod to mental health as a right. Now, this particular article is relevant for GS paper 2 with regard to polity and social justice. This can even be interlinked with GS paper 4 ethics as well. Not directly, but indirectly, we can map it easily and put our argument in favor of it. Afterwards, the key theme that has been discussed in this particular article majorly talks about, we got to expand Article 21 to include mental health also. From prelims perspective, the areas that we have to brush up our knowledge is on knowing about fundamental rights, in specific Article 21 and Article 32. Mental Health Care Act 2017. The data with regard to increasing suicide rate amongst youth and also in students as well. Implications of student suicide and institutional accountability. Who is to be held accountable for rising suicides among the youth? Then there is a concept which is called as victimology and structural violence in educational systems altogether. This is to be read and revised. Afterwards, the judicial expansion of dignity and its jurisprudence can be linked while going through this particular article. And this is how this is to be read in holistic manner. Moving on, the next important article that is there in the paper and holds relevance to read in today's paper talks about rising obesity, children's exposure to ultra-processed food. Now, when we map this particular article in our GS syllabus, this will fall under GS paper 2 under the theme health, GS paper 3 economy as well. The key theme that has been discussed in this particular article is public health and nutrition paradox that we have in current times. From prelims perspective, we have to revise the data with regard to National Family Health Survey data, that is NFHS. What is Poshan Abhiyan and what are the sections that is being catered by this particular scheme? Food safety law, role of FSSAI. Afterwards, from mains perspective, the areas that we have to brush up our knowledge is on knowing about obesity as a lifestyle disease in India that is increasing nowadays. In one hand, we are seeing a population who are obese in nature and the data keeps on increasing. At the same time, half of our population is affected by malnutrition and hunger. So the paradox that we are seeing with regard to nutrition altogether and health, alarming health at this particular time is to be seen. So in this manner, this particular article is to be holistically seen. Then afterwards, we can even link it with the role of regulators that they have with regard to advertisement, taxation, and school policy, long-term burden and its implication with regard to rising lifestyle diseases. This can even be quoted. So in this manner, this particular article is to be holistically seen. Moving on, the next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention majorly talks about Supreme Court on anticipatory bail in caste crime. Now, this particular article is to be seen through the lens of GS Paper 2, Polity and Social Justice. Now, the key theme that has been discussed in this particular article majorly talks about balancing protective discrimination with misuse safeguards as well. From prelims perspective, the areas and arenas that we have to brush up our knowledge on, talking about Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Act, its 1989 provisions. We need to know about Article 17 and 46, safeguards with regard to SC and ST. For mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of bar on anticipatory bail. Is it rational or misuse debate? At times we have seen in news. So we need to know both the provisions with regard to it. At the same time, we have to even brush up our knowledge on the debate with regard to dignity and equality as a core constitutional principle that is there. Afterwards, evolution of Supreme Court jurisprudence on caste atrocities in Indian society. So in this manner, this particular article is to be holistically seen, knowing about a lot of judgments that we have, constitutional provisions, the several statutory laws that we have brought with regard to it. So in this manner, this particular article is to be seen. This is all from my end for today's Hindu newspaper. Till we meet for the next time, take care. Goodbye.